Make the ground shake.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Game Hub. I'm your host GamerK, and it's time to end the month of January. And first, a very special happy birthday shout out to my loving girlfriend. And if you ever watch this video, know that I always love you, even during this whole craziness that we're going through. And to celebrate her birthday, which by the time this video is released will be tomorrow, I am going over one of her favorite games of one of her favorite literature detectives. Last year, we all got into the blunder of this whole pandemic. And during that time, scouring through YouTube for stuff to watch, I came across a YouTuber who I will put in the description down below, Arglefump, who did the Nancy Drew Clue Crew Mega Marathon for the COVID, starting the month of March. And I needed something to watch, and I started watching. And then I remembered that my girlfriend loves Nancy Drew, so I was wondering, does she have any of the games? And out of the 33, she had 2. And I'm going over the first one that she let me play, the 25th anniversary edition, Nancy Drew, Alibi and Ashes. Now let's get started. And also, for Arglefump's channel, link will be in the description down below of this video. And I just gotta say, thank you for getting me into the Nancy Drew games, Argle. Okay, if I call you that. So let's get started. So, the Nancy Drew games are a point-and-click adventure game, kind of like in the same way Telltale has point-and-click, which I really, really love. I love those types of detective games. The only drawback on them is you can't, unless you turn around, you can't see behind you, and that really gets my jitters up. So Alibi and Ashes is the 25th game in this series, and therefore is a 25th anniversary edition, where the game is taking place in Nancy's hometown of River Heights. During the game, there is a clues challenge where you group up with your friends and solve puzzles to find a medallion. And I'm just going to say this, hosting this in a town where a famous detective who has solved about 24 crimes before this, who do you think was going to win? Seriously. So Nancy follows a clue, or a letter that she got, and goes to the old town hall. She goes in, and spark! A fire ensues. After escaping, the news crew is there, along with some of her friends, and some of the local townsfolk. The next day, Nancy is arrested on suspicion of causing the fire. And this is one thing I love when they do anniversary editions of games, whether it's any type of game. If for an anniversary, you gotta do something different to freshen it up. And having the main character behind bars for a good first half of the game, I gotta admit, that was pretty cool. A really cool way to start things off. And in such, being stuck at the police station, you will have to use your phone in order to call Nancy's friends, Bess, George, and her boyfriend, Ned, who I still don't understand why we don't see him, and yet we see her 2 friends. I don't get that. So, going back a little in detail, the game came out in 2011. And I gotta admit, finding out about it in 2020, yeah, I'm kind of slow when it comes to certain game series, so bear with me. The game does really do the point-and-click adventure game really well by going through the town of River Heights, and luckily, unlike other games where you kind of have to keep clicking in order to get through certain places, there are certain set locations like the Scoop Ice Cream Shop, the Antique Shop, the Drew residence, the police station, and the town hall crime scene. I really enjoy that after you leave one of those areas, you are brought to a map where you just click a location and will instantly drive you to said location. I really, really enjoy that because it kind of takes away the annoyance of constantly having to click in order to go a certain place, or you get lost, or they could have just have us like using the mouse to drive to a certain location. I'm really glad that they had that kind of instant go kind of thing for the mechanic of traveling. Now, the entire basis of this game is trying to find out who set Nancy up and why. A good majority of suspects come out throughout this game, and Tony Scolari, who's the councilwoman who also runs the Scoop ice cream counter. Brenda Carlton, who's the news reporter, who her and Nancy have a bit of a, not a professional detective rival, but kind of a rivalry nonetheless. Alexei Markovic, who is honestly one of my favorite characters, who used to be a child detective like Nancy until he was discredited and turned into a bitter old man at the antique shop. And then there's Deirdre Shannon, who is Nancy's rival yet again, who's a criminology student, and she constantly wants to get Ned from Nancy. You gotta love when they spice up the number of characters they do. So, for this game, using the phone as Nancy, you can switch between Bess, George, and Ned in order to do various puzzles, talk to certain characters, because in order to get certain answers, you need to have certain characters in order to interact with certain suspects, which I really do love. And I love that there's no big treasure, there's no real big mystery to unsolve, except for the arson. Because in a lot of Nancy Drew cases, there's always solving an old crime to kind of connect to a new crime that's been committed, or something that's caught, or cause and effect, something like that. But here it's just a simple who framed Nancy and who burned down the town hall. I like that for the anniversary edition, they decided to stick to the one mystery to solve, and I really do love that. Although you do kind of uncover some other things in the game about certain suspects, and I really do enjoy that they don't go overboard with it. Like, they kind of just put a couple things to address and to reveal, rather than just the whole smorgasbord of stuff like they do in a lot of other cases. Like Midnight in Salem, yikes, did they throw everything in the kitchen sink into that one. So, let's see. Now, in this game, like a majority of the Nancy Drew games, you can pick either Junior Detective, which gives you a task sheet and hints depending on who you ask in the game. On Senior Detective, you get no taskbar and no hints, and the puzzles can be a little bit more difficult. Speaking of the puzzles, this game, unlike the previous games, and I've only played like 6 out of 33, so don't judge me on that, the puzzles in this game aren't heavy. Like, there's not a lot of puzzles in the game. There's a couple, like a number puzzle where you gotta click all of them within a certain amount of time. There's a lock puzzle, electronics puzzles. Like I said, there's not that much puzzles in the game, but I really enjoy that. On the flip side, we get a bunch of forensic equipment to use in order to prove suspects' lies and to prove their alibis, such as a chemical analysis where you will identify the accelerant used, fingerprints. I can't remember what you fingerprint, but you get fingerprints from characters based on the stuff they touch when you distract them. And I really, again, I'm going to go back to the suspects in a bit. Let's see. Another thing that I really do like, but something I like, but at the same time I kind of don't like, is the ability to switch between characters. The only problem is you can only switch with Nancy, and so if you want to switch to another character, you have to go back to Nancy by calling her, and then calling another character, which gets real tiresome really, really quickly. Not only that, but when you figure out that you need to use a certain character in order to talk to a certain suspect or do this certain puzzle, it gets a little tedious once you do it about 20 times, mostly because when you get lost. Also, another thing in this game is you really got to look under every nook and cranny, because I spent a good day trying to figure out how to progress, and then I kind of got some help, and my girlfriend showed me up, and she couldn't stop laughing. Thank you for that. Let's see. So going back to the gameplay of this, as George, Bess, and Ned, you will go to the four suspects and question them, and depending on which character you get, you will get a different response, whether they'll talk to you, whether they'll be annoyed, or whether they just flat out won't talk to you at all. And I really do enjoy that, because it's kind of like you gotta pick who you want to talk to and as who to see what works. It doesn't get too tedious, but it's just enough so that it doesn't feel like all the suspects aren't going to blurt out what they know to everyone. You kind of got to ease them into a little bit. Like, you got to have a nice approach with Alexi so he's not so crabby. You got to be Ned in order to talk to Deirdre, or else, a date, somewhat annoying. But again, I'm looking at my notes because I kind of have to, kind of like Nancy, I kind of forget where I am half the time. I really do enjoy that for this, they actually went with actual crime here. So it's kind of the old school cop game where you kind of need to, where you gotta question the suspects, work out a timeline to see who had opportunity, who had motive. I really do enjoy that. And honestly, at the beginning, kind of like every Nancy Drew game, everyone's suspect. It's not really given really right away. Like, there's no big indicators of who could possibly do it. Because in some crime games or crime shows, they kind of do that whole thing where they kind of do the too obvious situation. And I really do love that the game does that. It's very investigative heavy, and for a guy who loves crime shows and crime games, I really enjoy it. Collecting a bunch of evidence is kind of easy. You have to get the suspects away from where they are in order to check their stuff. It's enjoyable. And then in the game, another part I find kind of tedious is bringing evidence to the cop station so Nancy can analyze it and put it on the evidence board, which has all the suspects, all the evidence, and you just got to have the correct amount of evidence on there in order to get out for the second half of the game, where we can finally not switch to characters. I think I spent like 3 days and an hour trying to figure out like what I missed, because I went back and forth to every location, and it's annoying. Little heads up, check the crime scene first very thoroughly. And like I said about the puzzles, there's not that many of them, which kind of hampers the game a little bit, because Nancy Drew games are a staple for their amazing puzzles and how they fit within the game. Although, to be fair, if we're doing a game in Nancy's hometown, there's probably not going to be a lot of like hidden puzzles or anything like that, which I really love. One thing I really enjoyed, I mean, every anniversary edition of the game, you have to have some kind of throwback to the previous games, just to show how much you appreciate I think this is an homage from the creators to the fans to say, like, we've made it to 25 games. And that's amazing. So here's a little something extra for you to enjoy. And in this one, in the Scoop Ice Cream Shop, you can play a word shuffle game where there's a phrase, where there's a sentence, and you have to switch the words between going vertically, the vertical columns, and switch the letters in order to produce a sentence that was said in a previous Nancy Drew game. Now that is dedication to your fans, putting this little thing just so they can just calm down and take a break and just do something really fun. I love the Nancy Drew games where they give you like a small mini game of some sort that kind of initializes into the story that you have to do with a character in some way, but it's just something to keep that's fun. And if your brain hurts from investigating so much and you need to take a breather, just play the mini game in the game, and it's easy. It's something fun to do, and it's honestly, I spent a lot of time playing that game until it kind of circled back and it was easy. It was just good, clean fun. Much like some of the new Nancy Drew games, there are extra awards that you get if you do certain things in the game. For example, if you open up the box in Brenda Carlton's van 3 times, you will get an Easter egg. I'm not sure when they start introducing these weird Easter eggs into the game. They're kind of crazy, and I don't get it, but it's crazy fun. I really enjoy them. There are awards that you can get for doing odd stuff, like pulling the fire alarm in the police department in order to try to escape, which doesn't work. Solving 15 of the word shuffles. Switch between characters 16 times. Analyze all the accelerants that you can gather. Stuff like that. And even one of the more annoying ones, sending Brenda Carlton all over the map, just for the heck of it. Now, it is an enjoyable game, and I really, really enjoyed it. As my first Nancy Drew game, and the Anniversary Edition, I gotta admit, I really did love the environment of River Heights. I enjoyed seeing all these people that Nancy knows, and how they know her a bit, and what their real relationships are with a whole bunch of characters. I really do love it. And for an anniversary game, it is important that you focus on the main character that has built up your franchise. And I got to understand a little bit more of the chemistry between certain characters, and lack of chemistry, and that's just a good time. And they didn't go overboard with the design of the game, and I really do appreciate that they didn't go overboard for an anniversary game. If I had to nitpick one thing in this game, all the Nancy Drew games have one thing in common, is that final puzzle once the culprit's revealed. You gotta do something in order to catch them, or they escape and you're trapped, and then you gotta do a puzzle in order to escape. This is by far the most irritating final puzzle I've ever had to do in a Nancy Drew game. I mean, I've only played 6, and they're all good ones. The maze at the end, depending on what difficulty you pick, there is a book in Alexi's antique shop that shows you the directions to go. But in the Nancy Drew games, there's a lot of writing stuff down on scrap pieces of paper in order to solve codes, in order to keep certain symbols in so you remember. I love all those old-fashioned games, because I never really played a lot of them like as a kid, where you had to write stuff down on an old scrap piece of paper and keep it with you, so you had all your cheat sheets and your codes and your symbols down. And that maze was one of the only things in the game where I actually had to use an online guide in order to get out of, because it was driving me nuts. And it doesn't help that because the culprit's getting away. I'm not revealing who the culprit is. You have to play the game. There's a time limit, so it gets even more annoying when there's a time limit for you to solve the final puzzle. And I will admit, the game does what it does. I've said this a lot, as an anniversary edition, it succeeds in that, bringing us to where Nancy is, where she feels comfortable, and having to be locked up in your own hometown. I really enjoy that. The characters are really fleshed out. You can feel that there's either animosity or genuine love for each character. I especially really love Alexi and Deirdre. Their characters feel so fleshed out. It's like I've known them forever. And the other 2 characters, I hated them right off the bat just because of their comments. It's one of those games where even if there's not a big build up for the characters, you can still feel if you hate or love them. And I really do enjoy that the characters feel so fleshed out right in this one game that they're showcased, and yet you know more about them just from listening to their stories and what they talk about. And also, I believe other than Ransom of the Seven Ships, this is the only game where Bess and George are actually shown instead of just being on the phone. And I really do enjoy them being on here. But in the next game, can we please see Ned for once? I mean, we have a picture of him, so can we please see that? So, having a lack of big challenging puzzles and focusing more on a detective style game, I don't have any complaints about that, because I'm a big detective guy. I'm a big crime solving guy, and I really do appreciate that the puzzles were kind of held back a little bit. And there wasn't some, okay, there is kind of a big secret that was held in the past, but nothing too ancient, and it doesn't lead to a mysterious treasure. It just leads to some vindication, and I gotta say, the culprit reveal, about halfway through, I kind of pieced it together, and I still really enjoyed it. It was really good. So once again, lack of puzzles, but focusing more on the detective story and vindicating Nancy and another character later on, doing the forensics, questioning all the suspects, going throughout every speck of the city and looking for evidence. It was just a blast. And honestly, for my first Nancy Drew game, it was really fun. And I enjoyed it. So I gotta thank Arglefump and my girlfriend for getting me into this series now. Am I gonna get the rest of the games? Maybe in the future, some of them. Am I hoping that more games get made? Yes. Do I hope they're like Midnight in Salem? No. I want them to go back to how they were. So, enough of my rambling. GamerK's final verdict for Nancy Drew, Alibi, and Ashes is... I can't think of a pun to do this, but it is a solid 8 out of 10. It's a very fun and enjoyable game for new people of the series and for fans of the series, because it just gives us everything that we could have expected from a game that takes place in Nancy's hometown and makes us feel like these characters, we've known them. When a series makes you feel like you've known these characters for a long time, it's a good thing. It would have been a 9 if it weren't for that god-awful sewer puzzle. Sewer maze. I hate mazes. I'm just saying. And that's it for this episode, ladies and gentlemen. Like, comment, subscribe down below, and that's the end of January. So, next month, it's the month of, well, only the beginning of the Holiday of Love. And how do we start off next month? Well, we're going to be reviewing one of my favorite feline. I'm reviewing a cat burglar. Enough said. This is GamerK, logging out.